We married when she was 18 and I was 20. 25 years later, after our two children left home to start their own lives, she asked me for a divorce. At first, I thought it was a joke, but she insisted on divorce. This was not a joke. I was stunned. I wondered what I did to make this happen. I thought we had a great marriage. We had strong family and social ties. Both worked and had similar incomes, so money was not an issue. She was about to graduate from high school when we first met. I have already started studying at college. We both lived in our parents' houses. She continued to attend school social events after graduation. I was looking for something to occupy myself after class. The party we met at was organized by a friend whose younger brother was still in school. Therefore, the invited guests included both high school and college students. I saw her from across the room. Her blonde hair stood out against the crowd of dancers. You never know what's behind the hair and face until you get closer. Her body perfectly matched the way she danced. She was slim and proportionate in all the right places. Some girls wore sneakers and jeans. She looked more mature and formal in her skirt and low heels. Unlike girls who wore their hair in ponytails or casual twists and pins, she let her hair fall in waves that fell over her slender shoulders. She looked more mature than her years. I walked a few steps closer to her and watched her dance. I couldn't tell if she was alone or dancing with someone lost in the crowd. I guess I stood out standing still while everyone around me was dancing. I think it was my clothes that attracted her attention to me. I was dressed like a typical college student, Dockers pants, a short-sleeved collared shirt, and penny loafers. My hair matched the look I was wearing. She didn't stop dancing when she came up to me, looked up and asked, "Are we dancing together?" I was speechless. She was beautiful, and she spoke to me. Over the noise of the crowd and the music, I finally answered, "Now let's dance." I moved between and around other people to watch her. She mesmerized me when she looked at my face and smiled. "Have we met before?" I would remember if we met. "So, this is our first time meeting," she said, sliding into my arms to the slow tempo of the music. Everyone moved slowly as the volume and tempo of the music dropped along with the lighting. I couldn't believe I was holding her in my arms. She was so soft as she melted into my arms. I grew hard as I felt her firm twin peaks against me. She didn't move away. On the contrary, she moved against me. My thoughts left me as my body felt her. "Are you comfortable dancing like this?" she asked, looking into my eyes. "We dance?" I asked. "Holding you naturally, like we've done it before." "I like you," she said, laying her head on me. "Are you that comfortable?" I asked. "Yes. You smell so good, more like a man than a bottle of cologne." "Which would you prefer?" "Of course, a man." We continued to dance together until we were alone on the dance floor. The music had stopped and people were either sitting or standing in groups talking. We stopped dancing when we realized the music had stopped. She took my hand and pulled me towards a table where 4 women were sitting. As we approached the table, she introduced me after awkwardly asking my name. A few minutes later, I was sitting at a table with 5 attractive women, one of whom had danced with me, and one of whom I wanted to get to know better. After a few minutes of getting to know each other, the girls began talking about people and things that were unfamiliar to me. I sat quietly while each girl had her say, but I concentrated on the girl I was dancing with. I had nothing to add. We broke up at the party, not before she made me promise that I would call her. She insisted on getting my number so that if I lost it or forgot to call, she would remind me. In my head, I knew there was no way I would forget her or her phone number. I can't say whether it was infatuation or instant true love. From our first official date until our wedding, we were never apart. We got married less than 6 months after we met. Her mother objected to our marriage because she believed her daughter was too young and would miss out on the opportunity to enjoy a single life before getting married. Apart from this one objection, our parents got along with each other and with us. A strong bond quickly developed between the 6 of us. Our feelings for each other were too strong for her mother's one objection to be taken seriously. When we announced that we wanted to get married, Both our parents were surprised. We were too young, too inexperienced, and did not have the resources to finance a marriage. Although I had other women, she was a virgin before me. She insisted, and I agreed, that when you find your one true love, you need to move forward, otherwise you may lose her forever. Neither parent expected, and therefore saved money for the wedding. Our wedding was modest, limited by the financial resources of our parents. There were many more people at the ceremony than at the party afterwards. Since our marriage, it was natural that we would spend nights together. Apart from a few nights at a nearby resort hotel as a honeymoon, we were on our own. Without our own resources, we had to rely on others for shelter. Since neither of us worked, we relied on our parents' hospitality. We alternated sleeping at my parents' house, her parents' house, and my dorm room when we were sure we could be alone. Our alternating sleeping places continued for a year until we both found jobs and could afford our own place. She worked full-time for the first 6 months after graduating from high school. She then continued to work part-time while attending college classes. At the beginning of the second year of our marriage, we found out that she was pregnant. It wasn't the best time to be pregnant, but apparently there's never a good time. It just meant another difficulty. With a lot of juggling and time management, we adjusted to the arrival of our youngest child. My wife was a ball of fire with boundless energy. While I focused on studying and working part-time, she did the rest. She delighted me. I was in love and thought that there would never be another, and there was not. Despite all the difficulties, we never wavered. We had each other to deal with whatever challenges life brought. By the time I had my second child, I had graduated from college and was working full-time. Suddenly, we had money. As the difficulties lessened, we enjoyed each other and the two new members of our family more. Life seemed good. When children arrived, others envied her for her balancing skills. She managed the house, the children, and me, her husband. She always seemed to have time to do what she considered necessary. She was the social director for our children, parents, me, and some women from our area. She never looked like a tired housewife. True to how we first met, she always dressed appropriately and looked professional when meeting with clients. Many men I knew were jealous of me for having such an attractive wife who always looked good. When she left college to become a homemaker and mother, our lives became routine. Routine in the sense that our lives focused on children and home. While I went to work every day, she worked at home. She took care of the children, home and work commitments. She had child care arrangements when she needed to leave the house for a real estate deal. Every evening we were together for dinner. After watching TV, we went to bed and had sex before bed. It rarely happened that we didn't have some kind of sexual contact before bed. Sleep after sex was satisfying and came easily and quickly. As our children grew older and no longer needed to stay at home, Mom began to devote more time to her work in real estate as a real estate agent. As our children reached their teens, my wife filled her days with other activities. She joined several real estate clubs, but left most after a few meetings. She remained in one group, Evening of Women Realtors. It consisted of female realtors from various agencies and numbered more than 30 women. A core group of 4 women organized meetings, invited speakers, and other activities of interest to the entire group. Most meetings were attended by 10 to 15 women. After the main part of the meeting was completed, the women who wanted to continue the conversation gathered at a nearby bar. I think that's when the problems started. Our problems did not arise suddenly. Over the course of several months, I noticed changes in her, especially after the ladies' night. These were subtle changes that I initially attributed to time and aging. When I felt that she stopped caring and found more reasons to complain about me, I had to take some steps. I don't know exactly what steps I could have taken, but I had to do something. Her changes diminished after a few days and then returned after another ladies' night. When she approached me asking for a divorce, I initially thought that her lady nights were a cover for other activities. We men are so concerned about our beloved women that we never know what they really want. We are afraid to stir things up, fearing that what comes out will be worse than what we imagine. I knew something was happening that I wouldn't like. Confronting her would, of course, be inconvenient for our relationship, so I either made excuses or hoped things would calm down. In hindsight, I should have intervened as soon as I realized she was questioning our relationship. Once she started telling me about the experiences of the women she met over and over again, I had to get our family involved. Perhaps my inaction is partly to blame. Unfortunately, life is full of new events and situations for which we are not prepared. I thought maybe she had found someone else. She insisted there was no one else. So where, when, and why did the idea of divorce arise? The only event I didn't participate in was her girl group. They met several times a month at ladies' nights. Her request for divorce led to many conversations between us. I wanted, no, demanded, to know what led to this situation. Contrary to my expectations, she only praised our relationship, lifestyle, and social interactions. So if everything was so wonderful, why the divorce? After many conversations, heartbreaks, sobs, and anger, she told me. In her women's group, there were women with stories of free life before marriage. Several women who were currently single, either through divorce or by choice, shared their stories. They talked about sexual adventures with different men, since there was nothing and no one to report to. They talked about the benefits of a free lifestyle. They could do what they wanted, whenever they wanted. This included sleeping with anyone. They made it sound like a wonderful and worthwhile experience. Some of the married women talked about what they did before they got married. It was a time when they sowed their wild oats without answering to anyone. They regretted the loss of what was exciting. These stories added to my wife's frustration that she didn't have her own stories to tell. She felt cheated by what others had in life that she did not. She has always been faithful to me. She didn't want to cheat on me, but she wanted her own stories. Her answer was divorce. We would live separately so she could live a free life without guilt for an indefinite period of time. When her curiosity is satisfied and she has her own stories, we could get married again and continue as before. This way she won't feel resentment for missing out on the free life she never had. She was so confident in our love for each other that she was willing to give me everything in the divorce agreement except what she needed to live. I was devastated. Our children were devastated. Both sets of parents were devastated. We tried to convince her. Both married and single friends tried to convince her. They told her that it was not and would never be the same as theirs. They were young or had never had a relationship like she had with me. They were jealous of her relationship with me. No matter how much they loved their husbands, it was not the same. She could never replicate the current relationship and love she had with me. But the stories of her single friends and cheating wives painted a romantic and exciting adventure. My parents and her parents tried to convince her of the stupidity of her thoughts, to no avail. Our adult children, one of whom was already married and the other engaged, intervened, to no avail. Her desire for a divorce undermined the trust I had always had in her. It didn't matter if there was anything going on before she asked for a divorce. My imagination, fueled by her request, was destroying our future relationship, even if she would have stayed with me. At the same time, she was destroying her relationships with our children, our parents, our friends, and everyone who knew us. Contrary to her claims, we all thought that this was a cover for one or many affairs that she had or wanted to have. It was an unproven finding that she denied, but in our minds she had cheated and now wanted to continue the relationship that she either had or craved. The argument went back and forth for months as she insisted that the divorce and separation would not last forever. In the end, this will strengthen her relationship with our children and with me. Despite our best efforts to convince her that the damage done could perhaps be repaired once the divorce was finalized, and she moved out, there was no turning back. Before our children reached their teens, my wife was back at work and earning a decent living so she could support herself. And what am I supposed to do while you're running around with other men and presumably sleeping with them? I asked. Sex is an intimacy that strengthens a relationship. It is an expression of love. What should I do while you are doing it? What should I think and feel while you are pursuing your adventures? How can I be sure that you will want to come back to me? You will be free to do what you want as long as you remember that you love me and we will be together again. Life changes people. What gives you confidence that one of us will want to get back together? I believe in our love, she said. Once the bonds of our love and marriage are broken, we will both change. Even now, the family, and I think there is more to it than you are telling us. Why can't anyone understand my point of view, the logic behind this? Would you rather I cheated on you behind your back? Do you want me to live the rest of my life regretting that I never lived a free life? I give you practically everything we have accumulated over the years of marriage in this divorce. I could threaten you, I said, but then you'll do what you want anyway, so there's no point. Every time she explained what she wanted to do, it was with sobs and tears, that it was causing so much pain, and this was not what she intended. When you hurt the people you love, they will avoid more pain from you. They will avoid you, just like me, I said. It hurts me that I'm hurting everyone I love, but I'm sure everyone will get through the temporary pain and understand that I need this to feel complete and move on with life. After all, we all love each other. I now doubt your love for me. Love has limits, I said. There may not be forgiveness. You're only saying this because you're hurt. After a while, you'll forgive me and understand how this is best for all of us, she replied. My parents are naturally upset and angry, and so are our children. But even your own parents are telling you not to do this, I said. My parents are old. They got married late. They did everything I wanted to do. They don't understand. They don't remember. They will understand in time, I'm sure, she said. After months of back and forth between her and the rest of my family and friends, I received the divorce papers. Everything was according to what she said. Attached to the documents was a handwritten letter. If you fight me, I will fight for more than I am currently giving you. I will move out the day you sign the documents. I have already found a place to live. The divorce papers were really generous to me. I stayed with almost everything. Since the children were already living independently, there was no subject of dispute. She took her personal belongings, several pieces of furniture, several photographs, and her car. The house was paid for in full, and it was left to me. She has already signed up for credit cards and car insurance in her name only. The day before I signed the papers and she moved out, she wanted to spend one last night together. My pain from her betrayal was too great to stay in the same bed with her. I slept in the guest bedroom that night and promised myself that if she did move out, I would throw our bed and all the bedding we had ever shared in the trash. We always had a great sex life, or so I thought. As soon as she started talking about divorce, all my sexual interest in her disappeared. She kept pushing me to spend our last night together. I just wasn't interested, despite all her persuasion and temptation. I responded to her request for one last night by telling her to leave me alone in the guest bedroom. I needed to sleep. All I could think about was that within the next week she would be in bed with another man, perhaps a stranger. I was too depressed to think or want sex with her. There have been moments since she started talking about divorce when she seemed to know what she was losing. She cried, sobbed, and then recovered and again insisted on divorce. On the evening of the day she moved out of my house, the house was full of people who sympathized with me. It was like a wake for a loved one. I was grateful for the support when I thought about her alone, and maybe not alone. Maybe now she's free to entertain someone new or someone she knows. I didn't want to know. I was happy to be distracted by people around me who cared about me, my children, and my family. Over the next week, I took time off from work to sort out our, now mine, financial affairs. Even though she left me all of our joint credit cards and was dropped from our health insurance, car insurance, and other insurance, I made sure that only my name remained on all previously joint accounts documents. Every evening I came home to an empty house and cried. I understood what she told me, but I still wondered if I had done something to provoke it. Maybe I could be more active and initiate more activities for both of us. What could I have done differently to save our marriage? Like everyone else, when you don't know the truth, you imagine, in this case, the worst. Sitting and crying, I imagined her in bed with other men. Even at 43, she was pretty. Her work brought her many contacts. It was easy to imagine that many guys, knowing that she was available, would target her and win her over to her delight. Every evening, crying alone, I wondered who she slept with. I was sure that her friends from the ladies' night would not leave her. They would introduce her to a circle of people who would provide her with what she was looking for. She got satisfaction, literally, while I sat alone at home and cried. She sent me several emails and left voicemails telling me how to contact her if I wanted. She was ready to date me, and maybe I would get lucky. She thought it might rekindle our old flame. I never answered her. For months, my ex-wife left messages for me to contact her if I wanted. I didn't answer. The tone of her messages has changed over time. She expressed our mutual love and disappointment that I had not contacted her. She wondered why I didn't want to see her, knowing that we loved each other. 6 months passed, and I heard less and less from her. The less I heard from or about her, the easier my life became. No one talked about her or showed interest in her. I felt sorry for her parents, who remained a part of my life. She was cut off from all of our mutual friends and family. Her declared lifestyle was of no interest to anyone. It was hard to imagine that my loving wife, the mother of my children, would leave me to sleep with other men. She actually left the day I signed the divorce papers. I was stunned when she physically took the small suitcase with the remaining items and walked out the door. I heard the sound of her car slowly moving into the distance. The silence became so loud that I covered my ears with my hands. My heartbeat was just as deafening. I was stunned and frozen in place as sympathetic family and friends arrived to console me. I couldn't believe she left so heartlessly. Although there was no goodbye kiss, I thought she felt we would still keep in touch. The first few nights alone, I lay awake wondering what she was doing. Luckily, I had a support system of family, friends, and neighbors who helped me keep my mind off my pain and thoughts. I later learned much of what happened after she left. When she left me for the last time, she went to a small apartment that she rented. The things she took from our house were already there. Closing the apartment door behind her, she turned on the TV for company and went into the bedroom. She fell on the bed and fell asleep crying, saying, "Tomorrow will be better." The next day, she got up early and went to the office. Mid-morning, she contacted her friends and told them that she was finally on her own. During the week, she met with friends for lunch and later for dinner. Although she expressed some doubts that she might have made a mistake, they reassured her that it was not a mistake and that she was on the right path to fulfilling her dreams. She was new to the dating world and everything took time. They assured her that within a month her schedule would be full. Then she won't feel lonely. On the contrary, she will be so busy that she will crave some alone time. My ex-wife was an attractive woman, not only for her age, but in general. She exercised and kept herself in shape. She was careful about how she dressed and expected any man she met to be dressed accordingly. Men dressed appropriately had money to spend on her. She wanted to be taken to restaurants and treated to dinner before considering sex. At her age, she wasn't interested in just jumping into bed. She wasn't looking for a long-term relationship. She just came out of one. She wanted a variety of short sexual relationships, but not for one night. My ex-wife's friends were determined to introduce her to men who would suit her. She thought highly of herself and had no intention of lowering her standards. She wanted polite, sophisticated gentlemen with money who would show her a good time before spending one or more nights with her. She had the looks and sophistication to demand men of a certain caliber. If she agreed to have sex, it had to be in luxury. She understood that expensive gifts came with implied obligations. This was what she wanted. The first man she met approached the table where she was sitting with her friends for dinner. He was wearing an expensive suit and looked a little older than her. After he joined their table and listened to their general conversation, he mentioned an upcoming conference at the resort that he was going to. When he asked who was interested in the general theme of the conference, my ex-wife was the only one who expressed interest. He then asked if she would like to join him for the conference and evening event. She said yes. After apologizing, they left the table together. There really was a conference, but it looked more like a party on the occasion of some event that my ex-wife never understood. When the conference ended, The man and my ex-wife went to other places where they continued to drink. Later, they went to his hotel room. This was the first time my ex-wife was going to spend the night with another man, or so I was told. She would be nervous if she didn't drink. The man was kind and gentle, which made it easier for her to agree to what he wanted. There was no pressure, just anticipation. After more drinking and many compliments, she responded positively to his suggestions. It had been a long time since a man had shown carnal desire for her, and she was ready. She was ready to just lay there and let him do his thing. He loved every part of her body. She was mentally and physically absorbed by erotic sensations, which did not give her the opportunity to express dissatisfaction with anything. She was starting to sober up when she realized they were both naked and on the bed. Every time she started to say something, his hands would touch her sensitive spots, making her forget about everything except what he was doing to her. All she could do was moan in forgotten thoughts. She woke up next to a man in the morning. He wanted to pick up where they left off last night. Unfortunately, she had to go to work. He continued to caress her with hints of what they could do while she got dressed. He hoped she would change her mind and stay the day or agree to meet him the next evening. She gave him her business card and invited him to call her. This was the first of many adventures my ex-wife had, almost all of which were organized through or with her friends. It was rare that she met a gentleman of the caliber she was looking for on her own. Her friends always knew where and when to be to meet the right gentleman. After the first time, it became a regular thing for her to meet suitable gentlemen through her friends. Sometimes she accompanied a friend on a date with her boyfriend. Eventually, some gentleman would approach her with something so interesting that she would leave with him. A month later, as my friends promised, my ex-wife was very busy between work and evening events. She had met so many men in the first 6 months that she couldn't remember them all. By the end of the first year after the divorce, she was in demand by many men whom she called her friends, despite the fact that they lived far away and/or had their own families and wives. Everything she dreamed of came true. By the end of her first year, she wasn't meeting as many new men anymore, but that was okay since she had a lot of regular friends. Between work, male admirers, and girlfriends, her life was constantly busy. In the second half of the second year, my ex-wife was full of energy but lonely at home. Late at night, she felt lonely. In the early hours of the evening, when she was alone at home, she was busy on the phone. In the late hours, when she was alone at home, there were no calls. At these moments, she felt lonely. Few of her friends, both female and male, came to her home. She was once an excellent cook, but now she never cooked. Most often, she was invited somewhere, so there was no need to cook. Although her periods of solitude were short, she felt that something was missing. She was a fun girl, as long as she was in a good mood and smiling. In those rare moments when she was sick, no one did anything except express the hope that she would get better soon. No one came to her house to do anything to make her feel better. People sympathized that she had problems like everyone else. Nobody offered to help. Nobody was interested in her adventures. All of her relationships were built on her physical attractiveness and playful nature. When she too was unable to support, she was left alone. The best she could hope for was wishes for a speedy recovery, even despite the occasional calls from her daughter. The few family calls were brief and limited to asking how she was doing. As soon as she answered in the affirmative, the conversations quickly ended. No information about the caller or family was mentioned. She was in the dark about everything that her life was before the divorce. She always dressed fashionably when she was with others, whether at work, with her girlfriends, or with men. She couldn't remember the last time she wore ballet flats when leaving the house. The heels were comfortable up to a point. She never wore pants again. Everyday stockings, heels, a dress or skirt, and tight tops. Makeup and jewelry were as important as clothing. When she saw age lines on her face, she covered them with lots of makeup. More than once the thought occurred to her that her active lifestyle contributed to the appearance of age lines that gradually appeared on her face. One day, after watching a disturbing television program, she wondered who she was living for. Everything she did was for the pleasure of others. She dressed to impress others. She smiled at others. The sex she enjoyed was for the pleasure of the man she was with at the moment. No one did anything for her. There was no one who would invest in it. Everything that was done for her was for the sexual gratification of someone else. Between the time the divorce papers were served to me and when they were signed, my wife lived elsewhere. I thought our kids kept in touch with her. If they were in contact, I'm sure they were trying to convince her of the error of her decision before it was too late. In fact, it was already too late. They never gave me any information about her. I think they were hoping she would call off the finalization of the divorce by telling her about the pain that I and the whole family were feeling. But she didn't cancel. I needed a lawyer. Shelly was recommended to me through friends. Shelly had a reputation in divorce cases. Shelly spent a lot of time going over the finer details of my divorce. She explained that most of the conditions were to my advantage. She had never seen such one-sided divorce documents in favor of the injured party. She understood the legal intricacies of the documents and was touched by my pain and doubts. At one point, she empathized with my pain and situation. Since she couldn't find anything to add, this allowed the divorce to move quickly. After the divorce was finalized, Shelly and I continued to stay in contact. At first, she was worried about me. Her anxiety spilled over into dinners or going to the movies. The more time we spent together, the less I saw her as my lawyer. It's been over 6 months since my ex-wife left me. Shelly and I became close. Her analytical mind remained aside. She was very warm and empathetic. I looked forward to spending time with her. I think she felt the same about me. Shelly had many stories about divorced couples. Some dragged on for several years until the parties tried to reconcile. I was interested in hearing her stories, but I never associated them with my own situation. About 6 or 7 months after the divorce was finalized, Shelly and I had a great dinner. Instead of kissing her cheek goodbye like we did before, I kissed her on the lips. It was spontaneous, completely unplanned. She didn't pull away or push me away. "I've been waiting for you to do this," she smiled at me. "I wanted to do this for a long time, but I wasn't sure if I was acting on inertia or on a rebound. I wasn't sure if you felt the same. I'm confused because I loved a woman for 25 years who left me and everyone we knew, without an explanation that made sense. I have feelings for you, but can I trust you? Are you hurting me like my ex-wife? Can I be open? I want to be open and completely honest, but I don't want to hurt you or ruin our relationship. Can you promise me that no matter what I say, we will continue our relationship? Will it be something bad?" "No, not at all. I think it might not be what you're used to, that's all. I hope you're not going to reject me like my ex-wife. On the contrary, it's the opposite. I don't understand. Understand that I am a lawyer trained to think a certain way. Secondly, you should know that I would be delighted to be a part of your world in every possible way. Thinking logically, you may still be on the rebound and perceive my feelings as replacing the lost ones. I don't want that. If anything comes out of our relationship, it should be something new and exciting, not a replacement. I don't understand. I need to make sure that you are completely over your ex. If our relationship continues and one day you tell me that you love me, it should be unconditional. If you still harbor any thoughts or feelings about your ex, this won't work between us. To be clear, nothing has happened between us for a year from the date of your divorce. It's in 6 months. It's true, and until then we can be close friends. But no matter how close we are, I won't sleep with you. I haven't slept with anyone for a long time. 2 or 3 times when I was thinking about getting married, I was in a hurry, only to find out that several other people were in a hurry in front of me. So they cheated on you. You can say so, although formally there were no agreements that we were exclusive, except for conversations about the proposed wedding. So you're being cautious, and you might still be on the rebound. So how do you see this coming to fruition? We have a minimum of 6 months to discuss how we see our future. Frankly, I want you. You have proven yourself as a husband. Everything I see and know about you says that I will never regret if we get married, but you should know that I have conditions. Well, everyone has conditions, although most of us don't express them until the very end. Okay, if we get married, I want at least 2 children. I'm 37 years old, and I don't have much time before I can't have children. Your first 2 children are already independent. Other than possible money issues, I have no problem with it. I continue to work as much as I can and want to. So you want me to stop working and take care of the kids? No, not at all. As a mother, I want to be a mother to my children, but I also don't want to be stuck in a routine, speaking only in childish language. You and I will decide how to deal with the children, but I will not be a housewife. Okay, for now. Everything we do together. It's always been that way for me. Obviously not always, since your ex-wife has decided to go the route without you. A point well received. Since this will be your second marriage and my first, and we both enter into it with money and property, I propose to split the money into 3 parts. We take the same percentage of our income and savings and invest it in a joint account from which we live. Only in agreed circumstances, we use money from our personal accounts for personal needs, such as gifts for children or grandchildren. Do you have similar situations? I have relatives. They never asked or needed my help, but who knows? So far, so good. Anything else? Yes. We have 6 months plus to discuss the details, but you should know that in addition to the marriage license, I want us to sign a prenuptial agreement. I'm not sure I understand. You're not the only one who's ever been hurt. I want it to be absolutely clear what would happen if our marriage ended for any reason. It sounds very suspicious to me, but if it's fair, I'd agree. We can't announce our engagement until a year later. Wow, lots of conditions. Anything else? Yes, I need to meet your family, friends and neighbors, and everyone who is close to you. I want you to meet my family and friends. Getting everyone's opinions about each other is important. If there are predictable problems, they will show up. I will always be myself, but if family and friends on either side are against this union for any reason, then there will be no marriage. You have a reputation, I know, but I've never seen any signs of it. If you're what I see and know you to be, there won't be a problem. So how do we proceed next? Just hold me, kiss me, and tell me you want me. No sex? No sex, but that doesn't mean we can't fool around and show our feelings for each other in other ways. It seems to be an old adage that what comes easy is not worth much, but what takes effort is priceless. So, I took her into my arms and told her how much I wanted her as our lips met in a kiss. In contrast to her analytical approach to our relationship, she melted in my arms and continued to melt. The next 6 months went by pretty quickly, although not fast enough for me. Most of my ex-wife and I's relatives already knew Shelly as my lawyer. Now they recognized her as my potential new wife. I think I made as good an impression on her family and friends as she did on mine. As we approached the anniversary of my divorce, Shelly became less formal, more loving, and more emotional. For a career woman known as a shark, she found common ground with other women, both married and single, with and without children. Her obvious emotional attachment to the children confirmed that if we got married, she would want children. Many of my family and friends were surprised that I had agreed in advance to have more children if we got married. About a week after our anniversary, we announced our short engagement. Within a month, we were married and working hard to have children. After a year of almost total abstinence, sex was more than just physical intimacy. You might think that trying so hard to have children doesn't reflect difficulty until you realize that Shelly was serious. She was tireless. Every day she calculated her fertile period. No matter how tired I was, I had to be ready. She was on a mission, and there were no concessions until she had a positive pregnancy test. When I was much younger, this would have been every man's dream. At my current age, after a certain point, it became a responsibility. If I shied away, she cried and always reminded me that I promised. This meant that I always had to be prepared. Too much of a good thing is not always good. There were days when I was exhausted going to work. Shelly was in great shape. She had the typical hourglass figure and exuded sexiness when she felt it. As a lawyer, she was always dressed to the nines. Like my Shelly, she dressed a little more simply, but never looked like a housewife. She loved clothes that emphasized her figure and made her look sexy. Some of the guys did notice, but kept their comments to themselves other than to say I needed to hurry home. Her pheromones affected everyone nearby. Shelly was amazing. She fit into my family and friends as if she had always been there. 6 months later, people were still mentioning my ex-wife. Some wondered how she was and what was happening to her. Others sympathized with my loss. 3 months after Shelly announced her pregnancy, no one mentioned my ex-wife anymore. It was amazing. It was as if a switch had been turned on and she no longer existed. Even my children and their other halves did not mention her anymore. All our discussions were future-oriented. Few, if any, talked about the past. Shelly's relationship with me mirrored that of her parents. Her father made the final decisions, heavily influenced by what her mother said. Sex was always good with my ex-wife. It was different with Shelly. She did as much for me as I did for her. Somehow it felt more complete. The only time there was virtually no sex was during the 3 weeks after giving birth. Sex for Shelly was more than just physical pleasure. I think it was part of her control mechanism. Naturally, do everything possible for the woman you love. But it becomes necessary when the woman you are having sex with now and in the future wants it. I'm sure my daughter was in contact with my ex-wife. As far as I understood, my daughter's only interest was to know that my ex was physically healthy. Not once did she want to know what my ex-wife was doing and with whom. Whenever my ex-wife tried to talk about her life or asked about me, my daughter would stop her, saying that she was not interested and would not be a mediator between the parents. If my mother wanted to know about me, she had my phone number and knew where I lived. My daughter told my ex-wife that she and I keep in touch with our families, neighbors, and friends. No one was interested or wanted to know about her. Everyone thought she was enjoying what she left me for. There was nothing to discuss. Shelly finally gave birth to her baby. Her happiness was contagious. People were simply drawn to her. This increased her infectious mood. It became the center of family and friendly events. Everyone consulted her on legal matters. I was surprised by the relationship she developed with my 2 children from her first marriage. My son, daughter, and their spouses worshipped her. She was not only a source of information, but also an emotional support for many of the problems my children faced. I married a vibrant woman who never made me feel out of place or behind. She worked, cooked, took care of the house, the baby, and me, without ever making me feel unappreciated. Everything was fine until our son's first birthday. It's been about 2 years since the divorce was finalized. Shelly hosted a Sunday birthday party for everyone in our house, using almost the entire backyard. People started arriving around 11 a.m. By 2 p.m., we had a ton of people celebrating with drinks, food, and music. The star of it all was our 1-year-old son. My daughter's son, my grandson, who is also about a year old, ended up in second place. At about 3 o'clock, someone heard the doorbell ring. Shelly yelled for her to come in. The door did not open, and the bell continued to ring. Finally, Shelly went to see who it was. She opened the door and saw a slender, attractive woman in a seductive outfit, standing uncertainly, as if not knowing what she was doing. "How can I help?" Shelly asked. "I was looking. I live here. After a few seconds of hesitation, Shelly shouted, "I know who you are. You are the ex-wife." My ex-wife was shocked that this strange woman recognized her. She was about to turn around and leave, but Shelly grabbed her arm and pulled her into the house. To my ex-wife's surprise, Shelly hugged her, saying, "Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. You have given me the greatest gift." "What are you talking about?" asked my ex-wife in surprise. "About your rejected husband, of course. I could never have imagined that I would find a more perfect man as my husband." "Are you married?" "You didn't know." No, nobody told me." "Well, perhaps because you were very busy. It happens. So, I guess you're celebrating your wedding." Shelly didn't answer and instead dragged my ex-wife further into the house. Taking off her coat and hanging it in the closet by the entrance, Shelly began introducing her to nearby couples. My ex-wife immediately recognized these couples, just as they recognized her. Everyone was surprised. No one has contacted my ex-wife since the divorce. They did not know and did not want to know anything about her. They knew why she left, at least the reason she gave for leaving. They could imagine what she was doing, and it was something they didn't want to talk about. Quickly overcoming their surprise, they said, "You look good." To which she replied, "You too." "Sorry," Shelly said. "I should have realized that you knew each other. Sorry if this was awkward. I'll try to avoid anyone you already know, unless you want to say hello to them." "No, I'm just here to talk to myself, your husband. I'm sure he's somewhere in silence, with a beer in his hand, drinking with friends. Let's try it in the kitchen." On the way to the kitchen, the noise of the crowd died down. Nobody said anything, but everyone watched. They passed several couples that my ex-wife didn't recognize. That's when Shelly said, "Let me introduce you to some people you don't know. These couples are in the same situation as my husband and I." "What's the situation?" asked my ex-wife. "What we have in common is that we are in second marriages, at least men. Men are also much older than us wives, and we all create second families." About. Shelly introduced my ex-wife to 3 couples she had never met. Shelly introduced my ex-wife as her husband's ex-wife without ever using her name. Everyone had heard the story about my ex-wife and knew there was nothing to talk about except to wonder why she was there. My ex-wife said, "Hi," and the couples responded, "Hi, nice to meet you." When there was apparent silence between them, Shelly dragged my ex-wife into the kitchen. On the way they met my parents. They were a little older, but still recognizable. Shelly introduced them anyway. They looked at Shelly and then at my ex-wife. It took them a few moments to realize who Shelly was introducing to them. They were stunned and didn't know how to react or what to say. "Mom, Dad, it was in the past," Shelly said. "She is still human, and you have 2 grandchildren and 1 great-grandchild from her. Forgive and forget the bad. We all celebrate today." "Great-grandson, that means I'm a grandmother," my ex-wife muttered. "You did not know? Your daughter gave birth about a year ago, almost at the same time as me." "You have a baby?" my ex-wife said sadly. My parents stopped their train of thought, smiled reluctantly, and said, "You look good. It's hard to forget those last days and weeks." Shelly worked hard to make sure everyone saw the positive side of it. "In this spirit, we want to thank you." "Thanks to me?" "Yes, for giving our son a second chance at happiness and, as it turned out, a second family. As you can see, he found the perfect woman for this." My ex-wife stood stunned by their gratitude for her past misdeeds. She smiled shyly and nodded to acknowledge what they said. There was another awkward silence as Shelly continued to pull my ex-wife toward the kitchen. They stopped when they came across my ex-wife's parents. The 3 of them looked at each other in silence and began to sob quietly. Her parents never contacted her and never heard from her. Everyone thought she did what she intended, and no one wanted to know the details, especially her parents. They were offended not only by what she had done, but also by what she was about to do. She was still their daughter, but one they didn't want to know anything about. "I think you have a lot to talk about. I promise I'll bring her back to you," Shelly said as she continued to pull my ex-wife toward the kitchen. The next elderly couple was a stranger to my ex-wife. Shelly introduced them. These were Shelly's parents. Once the parents realized who they were being introduced to, they said, "Thank you. Thank you very much. We want you to know that your ex-husband is in the best loving hands." My ex-wife began to say, and her eyes filled with tears. "Let's go," Shelly said. "There are so many people here, and I never expected you, but you are a welcome guest. It just seems so hard to get to the kitchen without bumping into someone you know, should know, or knew." My ex-wife smiled faintly. Continuing into the kitchen, My ex-wife recalled the times when everything around her belonged to her. The memories came flooding back, and her heart fluttered with depression. She knew this house too well from 25 years of marriage. It has been slightly redesigned, but retains its basic appearance. She followed Shelly as a guest in the house that had once belonged to her. There were 3 guys in the kitchen. All 3 were holding drinks in their hands. The 2 guys facing the kitchen entrance stopped talking when they saw Shelly and the woman with her. One guy stood with his back to the entrance to the kitchen. When the 2 stopped talking and looked behind the 3rd guy, he turned around. "Honey, look who's here to celebrate with us," Shelly said, and I slowly began to understand who this new arrival was. Shelly prepared me for this day. However, this was a surprise that I was not prepared for. "You look good," I finally said. "You too," my ex-wife replied without moving. "Okay, guys," Shelly said. "I think these 2 need to talk. Why don't we give them some space?" 2 guys left the kitchen, walking past my ex-wife. They knew her, but didn't say a word. Shelly came up to me, kissed me on the cheek, and said, "We talked about this, love you." Closing. "Okay." "Okay, Shelly, I can handle it," I said. Left in the kitchen with my ex-wife, we looked at each other without saying a word. "Everyone seems to thank me," my ex-wife said, crying. "Yes, it was Shelly's idea to turn a negative into a positive. I think she convinced everyone that what you did was ultimately a selfless act for my benefit." Do you agree with this? That's the best way to look at it. What's the alternative? I see you got married again and have a child. That's why everyone is here today. We are celebrating the first birthday of my son and our granddaughter. They were born 2 weeks apart. I didn't know. I didn't know anything. Our daughter sometimes calls me. She never said you got married or that she was pregnant. Besides asking how I was, she never asked about me and never said anything about you. Can you blame her? When you left, you turned your back on everyone and everything we had together, including your own children. But I'm their mother. She must want to know about my life. You made it very clear when you left that you wanted to sow your wild oats, the ones you didn't sow because you got married too early. You wanted the freedom to do what you want, when you want, and with whom you want. You made it very clear that I was the only man you ever slept with, and that you were missing out on something that other women had. Did you want her to ask you how many men you slept with, and whether they were better lovers or sexual partners than your ex-husband, her father? No, I think not. It just seems like so much has changed. I recognize almost nothing. 2 years have passed. I tried to contact you after the divorce was finalized. I know, and I didn't want to talk to you. You hurt me deeply. In my mind, whether it's true or not, you were already having sex with other men long before you asked me for a divorce. It was the only explanation that made sense. What could a conversation with you do? I thought we had a good sex life. When you said that my one true love needed other men, how do you think I felt? Why don't you understand what I felt? Why do I want to talk to you? Do you think I wanted to hear that you slept with other men, many of whom I assume were strangers? Yeah, I guess I didn't think about it. I only thought that as the only love in my life, you would be interested in my adventures, that you would want to know that I was okay. I have never doubted our love and have never been able to talk to anyone as openly and freely as I do with you. This is true even now. I'm sorry to hear it. As you can see, me and everyone you knew have moved on. You are the past that is not remembered with pleasure. A person is remembered for the last part of his life, with those who remain. My ex-wife hung her head sadly. So why are you here now? When I realized that no one wanted to talk to me, I focused my efforts on what I had in mind. The first year was exciting beyond all my expectations. Towards the end of the first year, I noticed that my high level of activity was slowing down. In the second year, it slowed down significantly. Several guys wanted a long-term relationship, but not marriage. That would deny my reason for leaving you. Just when I thought I was ready for a more serious relationship, there were a couple of guys who wanted to marry me. No one compares to you and could not compare, so I quickly broke off this relationship. About a month ago, I was sitting in a coffee shop that we often visited. I was alone and thought about those times when we sat and talked about everything until late at night. Then I remembered my promise to return to you when I satisfy my desires. I didn't know what to expect when I approached the house. I hoped that on some level you would forgive me, and if you didn't want to take me back, at least be a friend. I didn't know what was happening when I walked up to the front door. I was completely taken aback when Shelly opened the door and greeted me so warmly. I didn't know who she was, but I quickly realized that she had taken what I had left. So what do you want now? Well, considering you have a new loving family, maybe we could just be friends. I wouldn't interfere in your life. I just wish I could talk sometimes. I'm afraid this won't work. I don't want to hear about the men you were with, where you went with them, and what you did. I don't want to think that I wasn't good enough for the woman I loved and cherished for over 25 years. You see, Shelly, as my lawyer, made sure that your name was removed from all of our shared documents. As my wife, she removed all mention of you from the house. She wants everything to be connected to us, without reminders of an unhappy past. Since we had children together, and this is a fact that cannot be denied, she left 2 photographs. They hang on the wall below next to each other. One of them is you, me, and our children in happy times. The other one is you. You may have noticed that all her ideas about you are as my husband's ex-wife. Those who never knew you know you only as ex-wife. When people talk about you, even those who know you call you ex-wife. Your name has been erased from our past. I can't remember your parents, even though we are still close to them, even today, using your name. When they talk about you, they call you ex-wife or their daughter. Shelly was a real gift. It replaced your pain for most people, including your parents. I wish I could say I'm sorry it came to this, but I can't. You have caused too much pain to too many people who loved and praised you until you became someone else. We really don't have anything to talk about. I speak for myself, and I think for others that we do not want to know about your actions over the past 2 years. We can imagine it, and it's disgusting to everyone who ever loved you. We are not interested in this. But that wasn't the case in the first month. If you had talked to me, things might be different now. Is it true? How is it different? Were you going to suggest that we continue living together while you pursue your adventures, as you called them? Did you expect me to sit at home alone while you had sex with other men? I thought we could talk. We always talked. We always helped each other. We always looked out for each other's interests. You still don't understand. As soon as you announced that you wanted to see other men, our connection, our trust was destroyed. Perhaps this could have been fixed before you left our home. Once you left, it was beyond repair. Nobody questions whether you did something physically or not. In our minds, in our imagination, you have become a bitch and an easily accessible girl. By choice, you turned your back on everything and everyone you knew up to that time. You killed everything we had together or talked about, so no, we can't be friends. We can't talk about the future. I don't want to talk to you anymore. Perhaps Shelly will provide you with a sympathetic ear only because she has a good heart and has ulterior motives that I cannot guess. My ex-wife lowered her head, holding back tears. I looked at her and felt guilty for not feeling guilty. If you have nothing to say to end this conversation, I suggest you start walking towards the front door. Remember, all this once belonged to you, now nothing belongs to you. I'm so lonely. Can't you find a little forgiveness in your heart for all the years we were happy together? I have feelings, and the pain is starting to come back even now. I can't or don't want to give you anything. If you can achieve something with Shelly, maybe things will change for you, but not between us. I don't promise anything. Goodbye. My ex-wife turned to the front door and walked out of the kitchen. As she passed the doorway, she met Shelly. Looking 10 years older than when she entered the house, she looked at Shelly with tears in her eyes. Shelly looked at me, looking at my ex-wife's back. She knew. She knew there was still love and pain. When Shelly saw my ex-wife about to collapse, she took her to an unused room. Laying her down on the small couch, Shelly said, "Get some rest, I'll be back." Shelly heard tears and sobs as she closed the door behind her. She's a real delusional bitch, but she was the love of my first husband. I have to make this better for everyone I love. She's damned. Shelly returned to her guests throughout the house and backyard. No one mentioned that my ex-wife was at a party in the house that once belonged to her. Everyone quickly forgot that she came. If they had thought about it, they would have assumed that she had quietly left. Shelly was busy with the guests until they left. As she was cleaning up, helping me, she remembered the sleeping woman in the side room. As I carried our son upstairs to put him to bed, Shelly grabbed a small plate of food and went into the side room. "Wake up," Shelly said, shaking the sleeping woman. "Where am I?" asked my ex-wife, waking up. "You're at your ex-husband's house with his new wife. You came to the birthday of our son and your granddaughter. I thanked you for everything you did for me when I opened the door. Do you remember now?" "Oh God, yes, I remember. I'm so sorry I intruded. I'll leave now." "Not until you've eaten and we'll talk. I don't want to create any problems. If I had known, I would never have come. I'm really sorry." "It's okay, but we need to talk. Eat and let me ask you some questions." "Fine. Do you work and support yourself?" "Yes." "Has your thirst for adventure been satisfied?" "Yes." "Are you lonely? Is that why you came to the house?" "Yes." "Perhaps I can help you. Are you ready to listen to me?" "Why do you want to help me?" "In a way, I owe you. More importantly, I think that by helping you, I can relieve some of the guilt that my husband, and I think others, feel towards you." "I don't understand." "When you finish eating and feel strong, I want you to quietly leave the house and meet me at my office this week. Do you think you can do it?" "I work independently, so I can take time off whenever I want." "Great. Here is my business card. I wrote my mobile number on the back. Call me Monday morning and we'll set up a meeting." "Fine." "I think so, but I don't understand." "I will explain everything in my office." "Fine." "Fine." Shelly left the woman alone in the room and heard the front door slam shut half an hour later. On Monday morning, my ex-wife called Shelly to set up a meeting for Wednesday at 11 a.m. "You have a visitor," announced a voice from the intercom. "Let him come in," Shelly said. "I still don't understand why I'm here," my ex-wife said. "Everything is fine. Let me ask you a few more questions to get a sense of where you're at in your head. I have a project, and I need to know if you are suitable, so please be patient." "Fine. Have you fully satisfied your thirst for adventure?" "Yes, I think so." "Do you understand the value of everything you've lost?" "Unfortunately, I understand now." "Do you understand that you can't go back to what you had, especially with the same people, including my husband?" "Yes," my ex-wife answered with tears. "Do you think you still love him?" Shelly asked. "He was my whole life for over 25 years. I have never forgotten him and will never forgive myself for the pain I caused. But yes, I still love him, or I think I do. You can understand that everything I do to help you is only for his sake. This is to lessen his pain and to make sure you don't hurt him again like you did when you showed up in the house. I'm so sorry that I came into the house and caused him more pain." "Are you addicted to sex?" "No. The best sex I had was with my, now your husband." "What about all the other guys in the last 2 years?" "The sex has been good in the last 2 years, but there has been no love. It will never compare to what I had with your husband." "And you wanted to be loved as you once were?" "More than anything else." "Have you had any relationships with men in the last 2 years that did not involve sex?" "Some." "Why no sex?" "There was no attraction." "Any relationship with attraction and without sex?" "Pair. Sex seemed to stop a developing relationship." "Do you know what I do?" "You're a divorce lawyer. You were your husband's divorce lawyer." "There are always two sides to a divorce. More often than not, one side has suffered more than the other." "And what?" "So, I know a lot of men who have been devastated by divorce, just like your husband was. Many of them are good people who need or want counseling. You could say that I gave special consultations to your ex-husband, who has now become my husband. Are you suggesting that I do the same? A lot of these guys are real treasures, some unpolished. I'm delighted with my husband. I never could have imagined that I would be as lucky as you provided me with. Maybe I can provide you with the same luck. You want to set me up with someone, right? Yes. Why do you want to do this? What's the catch? I want to make sure that we never hear from you or see you again. I want to make sure that you are forgotten and that there is no guilt for letting you fall to rock bottom. The catch, as you said, is in concluding a contract with the man with whom you establish a relationship. I don't understand. My contracts are a little more comprehensive than standard prenuptial agreements. They include a very detailed prenuptial agreement that penalizes. My husband agreed to this before we got married, and there is no reason to think other men wouldn't. Let's say this is serious. Why? I know my husband is still suffering. I want to make sure you stay away from him. I want to make sure he knows you've started a new life with someone else instead of falling even lower than you already have. What's to stop me from contacting my ex-husband in a year, or just leaving if I don't like the one you set me up with? If you ever cross me, I will publish all the pictures and dirt I have on you. No one will want anything to do with you anymore, including your parents and children. You will likely lose your current job and will only have other jobs available to you. Were you following me? Yes. Why? I love my husband very much, probably much more than you ever loved him. But this is not a competition to see who loves more. If I can make you whole in the sense that you have a stable, loving marriage, it might help those who once loved you to maybe accept you back into their lives. Let's be honest, I wanted to have leverage over you if you ever came back like you did. But I don't want to hurt you, your husband, or anyone else. I couldn't be sure. What leverage do you think you have? I have pictures of you with many different men. I have photos of you with 2 and sometimes 3 men. Some of these men will do anything to remain anonymous. This could be very dangerous for you. You really made up for lost time. You've even earned yourself a reputation. Do you know that you are advertised as an ex-wife? What do you mean advertised? Although you never took any money as far as I can tell, I'm surprised the police never came after you. Some of your girlfriends were definitely making money off of you. My ex-wife's face showed surprise. So you didn't realize that you were being turned into a bitch as an ex-wife. I do not trust you. I would know. Every man I met was a gentleman. There were never pre-agreed sleeping arrangements. I would never, if I had known. Your girlfriends prepared scripts for your gentlemen they followed. Sex was never guaranteed, but was highly likely if they could seduce you in a gentlemanly manner. Men won over you and were rewarded with a night of sex with you. That's what friendship is all about, Shelly said. Do you want to see some pictures, or do we understand each other? This can't happen. They were my friends. They brought gentlemen as friends, not as business. Over the years, I have hired many private investigators to keep an eye on you. 2 of them asked my permission to go undercover. I agreed on the condition that they pay their expenses. One paid for sex with a condom. Another paid for unprotected sex. The girls, your so-called friends, had different rates for each type. Do you remember the 2 gentlemen who came about 2 or 3 weeks apart and carried weapons? They seemed to explain the guns as part of their safety work and gave you the name of the same company they worked for. They could only compliment your services. My God, I thought they were my friends. They were turning me into an easily accessible woman. Do you want to see their ads? You may remember that when you first started, there was a long line of gentlemen. It slowed down in the second half of the year because the girls upped the ante for you. They got even more money for you the second year. My ex-wife was too shocked to react. I am confident that if I present everything I have on you to the proper authorities, you, your girlfriends, and many of your clients, and probably some police officers, will be arrested. You will never be able to prove that you did not receive money for your services. Is this enough leverage? Are you still active? Not for a few weeks, my ex-wife said through tears. There are many women this has happened to, but none of them have given as much as you have. I am an easily accessible woman. Oh God, what have I done? Does anyone I know about this? As far as I know, no, but they will know if you cross me. My ex-wife started crying uncontrollably. I have never thought. I never imagined. Oh God, what have I done? You became a corrupt bitch, but the worst part is what you gave to become one. You don't really have any friends right now. Subconsciously, you must have known something was wrong. That's why you came to my house for my son's birthday. Right now, I'm probably your only friend. I'm definitely the only one you can trust and count on. You know what my ulterior motives are. So now, the easiest way for me to make sure we never see or hear from you again is to kidnap you and drop you off in some remote Mexican town with no money or papers. It would take you years to find your way back to the US. The problem for me is that my husband would never forgive me if he found out. The next best option is to marry you off to a decent guy and make sure you never cross the line like you did. I'll keep an eye on you. I don't have a choice, do I? Suicide is a choice, but I don't recommend it. Tell me what to do. I will do it. Finally, the right answer. I will select suitable men for you. They will be good men, so you will have a comfortable life with the one you marry. With modern technology, you may even want to have more children. Have you been tested for styes? Yes. And I am clean. Glad to hear it. So if I do whatever you want, will you tell him, your husband? Yes, after you've been married for a year. If we can pull this off, I will tell him that you have a new life and invite him to share this with your children and parents. It might undo some of the damage you've done. My ex-wife remained quiet, contemplating a possible future. As for your new husband, we must be careful. No decent guy wants a woman who's had sex for 2 years with money of your own free will. I thought you had an undiagnosed brain tumor, which was discovered after more than a year in a mental hospital. This will explain your irrational and strange behavior. After the operations, you recovered and became normal. I will provide all documentation to support this story. If more people know this story, they may accept you back into their lives. This does not include me, my husband, family, or anyone from your past other than your children and parents. But I don't have a tumor. Do you want to have a tumor or be an outcast? I think you will never be able to have the loving relationship you had again, but you will not be alone. You will care and will be taken care of. You won't be alone. What about my future husband? I have enough dirt on any guy you choose to keep him in line. That's what makes it all so perfect. Once you get married, neither of you can live without the other, literally. If I agree and it works, how can I thank you? You already thanked me. You gave me your husband. How do we start? First, I have to find the right person for you. To do this, you will have to pass compatibility tests. That sounds so calculated, my ex-wife said. This is true. Think about people who have arranged marriages. Do they love each other less? The divorce rate among arranged marriages is about 6%. This is significantly lower than 55% among the general population. Why such a difference? Commitment. A commitment to love, respect, and obey. My ex-wife was worried and wary. This was a new adventure that she had never dreamed of. For us to understand each other, the obligations concern both of you. I have dirt on each of you. If either of you crosses the line, you will both get hurt and possibly go to jail. Don't cross me, so I have to be responsible for the guy I marry and myself. Yes, you will both share my vengeance if either of you crosses the line. One of the lines that should not be crossed concerns sex. No sex until I give permission until marriage. If you cross, you'll fly out. I can keep my legs together. Great. My secretary will contact you with everything you need to do before our next meeting. By the way, don't forget to pay my secretary on the way out. My ex-wife left Shelly's office with instructions and a list of topics to discuss with the men she would be dating. She dated 5 men in 2 weeks. There was no chemistry between the two of them. She was given new instructions and topics to discuss with the remaining 3 men. As before, there was no chemistry with one of them. Shelly gave her another set of instructions and topics to discuss with the remaining 2 men. There was no preference between my ex-wife and the 2 men. One of them told Shelly that something about my ex-wife was bothering him. "Okay, we're getting close to the finish line," Shelly told my ex-wife. "This stage is longer and more difficult than the previous 2. You will meet with each man twice a week for a month, doing what you both agree on. Remember, no sex. This may seem intrusive, but it's part of the plan. You can date either one or both of them on the weekends. It's your choice. Don't forget to pay my secretary on the way out." My ex-wife left Shelly's office, suspecting that Shelly had an ulterior motive that she had not spoken about. Both men were attractive, and both clearly wanted to have sex with her, as she did with them, but everyone was afraid of what Shelly would do if she found out. After a month, it became obvious that there was too much friction between my ex-wife and one of the men. "So," Shelly said as my ex-wife sat in front of her, "now let's get to the hard part. This stage lasts 3 months. You both have established that you like each other and get along. It may not be love yet, but I don't care. You must learn to love each other. You'll never get another chance like this. If you feel like I'm forcing you to do this, you're right. You must make a lasting commitment. He has already agreed to this. What do you say?" "Has he agreed yet?" "I'm undecided," said my ex-wife. "You've made decisions twice in your life. You agreed to get married, and you insisted on divorcing the same man. You are much older now, and I am giving you a 3rd chance to make up your mind. I don't care if you have doubts. You have to make a decision. It's either yes or no. What do you say?" "Can I think a little more?" "No. Phase 3 begins now. You can always leave before the marriage ceremony. You always have this choice. If you choose this option, you will be alone and on your own. To make this transition easy, I give you permission to talk about anything. Remember, no sex." "What if I can't make this commitment?" "Then you are on your own. You are alone." "Okay," she said weakly, "I will do it. Remember what I said. I want you to get married before the end of the year. Force yourself to love him if necessary. Pretend you love him if it makes it easier for you. Show your love physically in everything except sex. Remember, he was hurt by someone no less than you. You must cure him of this pain. You have to take control for this to happen. Anything less than a full commitment, and you will spend the rest of your life alone, very alone." My ex-wife started crying. "You're scaring me." "Fine. You should be afraid because it's a terrible future if you don't do it. Don't forget to pay my secretary on the way out." Following Shelly's schedule, they were to meet 3 times a week for 3 months. One of these meetings was supposed to take place over the weekend. "I think she's too strict," my ex-wife said to her would-be-husband as they had dinner Tuesday night. "I agree," the new guy confirmed. "I mean, I like you. We get along, and we have a lot in common. We always have something to talk about. But forcing us to fall in love is unrealistic." Shelly said that many people are forced to fall in love in countries or cultures where marriage is arranged. "So it's like an arranged marriage?" asked the new guy. "Something like that." "What are our options?" "Can we just stop?" suggested by my ex-wife. "Do you want this? I was pretty lonely before I met you. I don't want to be alone again. And you?" "I thought I wasn't very lonely until I came to Shelly's house, the house that was once mine. I saw my ex-husband and everything I left behind. It was then that I realized how lonely I was. Shelly gave me a lifeline. She made it very clear why she was doing this. I don't like the way she controls me or us." "I think we should give this a chance," the new guy said. "She's relaxed the rules so we can talk about whatever we want. We are no longer as young as we were. Finding compatibility and love is a big risk, especially when we have each other. I don't want to keep seeing my happy ex-wife from my lonely apartment. I think Shelly is right. We have to make this work. You're probably right. It's just being forced on us. Maybe this is what we need, said the new guy with a smile. Well, if you tell me your story, I'll tell you mine, my ex-wife suggested, keeping in mind the story Shelly had developed for her last 2 years. The new guy's story was an old one. His wife met someone through work, started cheating, and one day asked for a divorce. He was completely surprised and thought she was joking until he received the divorce papers from the lawyer. His wife knew about some of his illegal activities and used them to force him to give a divorce. He was dazed and deranged throughout much of the divorce process. Shelly saved him from losing everything. His ex-wife received the house and partial custody of their children. His alimony payments were contingent on her living alone, but that didn't last long. My ex-wife told her story through tears, constantly apologizing for all the pain she caused everyone, and then apologizing for her naivety. She surprised the new guy by telling him that she now realizes her naivety and hopes he can get over it. This began their 3-month forced courtship period. During this time, they often talked about what their marriage would be like. It didn't take 3 months for them to agree to get married. So, are you both ready for the wedding? Shelly asked as my ex-wife and new boyfriend sat in her office. Yes, they answered. This may not be a love marriage yet. This is a commitment that goes beyond a marriage license. I would like to point out that you both signed agreements with me. You may not have read them, or if you did, you may not have understood them. I'm not going to review them. In short, if your marriage does not last 5 years of living together and having sex, I have the right to seize all your assets for 10 years. In other words, you will become homeless. Any income you make will go to me. Be very careful if you think I won't follow through on my threats. If this marriage doesn't work out, I'll be vindictive, and you both know what I'm capable of. What do you think? I think it's a good deal. Think about what the alternative is. My ex-wife and her new boyfriend looked at each other. We can handle it, they said. Are you sure? Shelly asked. He took her hand and said, Yes, I'm sure. We got to know each other over the past few months. We get along. I can't think of anyone I'd rather be with. What about your ex-wife? Asked my ex-wife. She died for me a long time ago. What about your ex? My ex is now Shelly's husband. I can't promise, but I will put my whole soul into loving you. I promise I'll try. I promise. It's not enough, Shelly said. I need a commitment, and looked at my ex-wife. Okay, you've painted me into a corner, my ex-wife said, and then she looked at her new boyfriend and said, I promise to love you for the rest of my life. I promise you have my heart, mind, and body. My ex-wife looked at Shelly pleadingly. I can accept this. Decide where you will live. I'm organizing the wedding. A week later, my ex-wife and her new boyfriend got married, living in her apartment until the end of the lease. When the marriage was consummated, Shelly told me over dinner that she had found a good man for my ex-wife and that they were now married. She hoped this would ease any remaining feelings I had. As my ex-wife and her new husband settled into their new home, far away from us, Shelly gave our children and my ex-wife's parents contact information. Perhaps my ex-wife's new marital situation will repair some of the damage she has done over the past 2 years. With any luck, my ex-wife will have a relationship with our children and her parents again. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.